So yeah, this is not my dirty laundry or clean laundry hanging out, but this is the forest PowerPoint, and we first got this idea in Germany, and we saw lots of examples of this, but these particular ones here were set up for in 2014 for the CCF conference that TED organised. So I'm just reusing these because they illustrate some of the things that I want to talk about. So I work for Select4. Select4 is a trading cooperative. It's not my full-time job. There are 4 of us who work within Select4, and we trade our expertise in continuous cover. So we've got a phone call from Ben asking us to come and do some inventory work and some surveying, because we've heard all about the different designations and things that we have here, but the estate has been fortunate enough to being able to access some funding.
Yep.
As a result of that, you need to provide some evidence of what you have and what you're doing. It's all to do about transformation to continuous cover. So there's, I think, 225 hectares.
Yeah, 245 hectares we've got in for the policy woodlands. So that's pretty much all the, apart from that young stuff we looked at first, all that beach is part of it. Everything else we see this afternoon is part of it. And it's the, we talked about the designation before being designed, garden design landscape. It's basically that area plus a little bit more that's made up of the policies that we not wanted to necessarily clear fell, and so we went to access the forestry grant scheme.
But you were particularly lucky to get a combination of circumstances provided you access to the grant.
We looked at, there's not a lot of the grants been taken up. In fact, 10 hectares was taken up in the whole of Scotland, the forestry grant scheme, and the reason it wasn't taken up is you needed to go through some rather strange hoops to get to it, which is a deer management plan. And to have a deer management plan, most deer management plans have not been subscribed to very well either, because you need to be designated, and we just happened to have a little bit of designation that got us a a big bit of designation that got us a deer management plan, and a little bit of that designation happened to be in the LIS area, and that gave us the access to the grant. And without that, we probably wouldn't have accessed the grant, and that's why.
It's great that you're doing this grant, but you have this grant in Scotland. It's fantastic because the Irish are very good at funding continuous cover as well, and they have a management grant for transformation to continuous cover. But it doesn't have this element of monitoring in that. And the monitoring is going to be, we're going to, all these histograms and things here actually demonstrating what it is that you measure in here. Now, part of that is the regeneration. And the regeneration is what's key, and a lot of the regeneration in this particular stand is browsed. So I'll come on to that in a bit more detail, but this here is actually providing you with the data that you need in order to demonstrate what it is that you're doing, and that you're actually meeting the outputs that are required from the scheme. Okay, so this is what I do in my spare time. The AFI is the organisation that all this protocols and things came out of. The AFI is Association Fruitière Régulière, which is the association of irregular forests, and it has a network across Europe. And the first research stand that was set up outside of France was in Starhead in England, and since then, we've got research stands in Ireland, 8 of them in Ireland, 3 of them in Wales, 4 of them in England now, but they've also expanded recently into Switzerland and to Germany, so it's become very much of a European network rather than just in the French one. But it was set up by some fairly sort of disgruntled foresters who were practicing irregular forestry, and they weren't getting any support or recognition for what they were doing. They were all members of ProSilver. CCFG is ProSilver, and they were all members of ProSilver, but they felt that they didn't want to engage in the sort of the argy-bargy of politics and all these sort of things that was involved there was quite a lot of confrontation between state sectors and pro-silver movements in Europe. They wanted to sort of distance themselves from that, and they just wanted to say that we're all doing these things, and we want to share in what we're doing, so we've got to set up this network. We don't work according to any prescriptions, but we're coming up with very similar results. And there is a publication that describes everything that they've done. There is a book, and you'll see that if you have, I'm sure some of you have got copies of it, that they've identified all sorts of forests that are irregular forests, different soil types, different geographical distributions, but all coming up with a very, very similar sort of result. So a property that has a research stand within the network shares that data with others, and you can make comparisons and say, oh, for example, there's some of these forests in Ireland where there are research stands. There is Sitka spruce forests or Douglas fir in France, and you can make comparisons, for example, with the Douglas fir forest in France with the ones here. Their transformations are more advanced than they are in Darnaway, and so it gives you some very, very useful pointers and some idea of where you might be going. So that's the network. This here, floating in the wind, this isn't my idea. This is just a bit of additional decoration.
I got A-level
It's all a bit small. This is just an A3, but we can hand these round. We've got a lot more. We ran the ink dry on the estate office printer this morning. But this here is showing you what we've measured over the last few days, and there's some other things. So, and these we can come a bit closer and look at them. But this gives you some idea with histograms and pie charts of the species mix, and we've stratified these things here so that you can see in this one here there are 4 colours, 4 species colours there, and these are 2 different site types. So there's a bit of stratification taking on. So in one of these site types you only have Sitka spruce and Douglas fir, whereas this one here it's Western hemlock and Douglas fir. You can see that the Douglas fir, as you can see round about you, is dominating, and we're in one of the stands that has Sitka spruce, so it will be from this one here. But so this here is what we're doing here. We are putting up a local research stand. So a local research stand uses the same protocol that all the others do, but you have an AFI research stand. I've mentioned that already. Part of this wider network, there's an awful lot more measuring. You measure things like crown geometry, biodiversity indicators, deadwood transects, deadwood on fixed radius plots. So all of these there are in the AFI research stand, whereas the local research stand is concentrating essentially on the trees, the regeneration, the structure. It's identifying all the different elements of this structure, and you have that basic data that you can then overlay other information if you want to. If the as we were saying, Ben, that because of your particular need, you may need to overlay some of this deadwood, for example, deadwood data, or surrogates for biodiversity. Forest inventory is exactly the same, but it's on a different scale. This is, I call this a large woodland, but in the context of Darnaway, it's only 680 hectares, so it's a tiddler. But this here is exactly the same, but it's not on a compartment level, on a stand level. It's over a whole forest, and it's a systematic random sample. A grid is imposed on that, and then we then go and find all these sample plots and do the monitoring. And these are 2 people who actually set this up. We're in Curragh Chase in Ireland here. Max Bouchamaki and Roland Susse, they're the 2 people who kicked the whole thing off. And this is me in Germany. This isn't me here, but Holger here is actually saying this was the picture of the forest 5 years ago, and he's done a selective thin, and this is what he has now. So we've been looking at these beech stands. There's a lot of beech in this forest, and this is a beech forest which has only got leaf litter on the ground, and this is what comes when you selectively fell and you start transforming to continuous cover. And this is a rare species in Cranbourne. So, well, that wasn't as slick as I was hoping. And so those are the three types of inventory. This is Keswick, where Ted organised that marvellous CCFG conference, and it shows you basically how the protocol works. You identify a compartment which is actually going to demonstrate some characteristics that you can then replicate in other stands. You're not attempting, as I showed you in the inventory there, to monitor the whole forest. You're monitoring one stand in detail, and from that you can then infer what you're going to do in similar stands in the forest. But this is how it works. We're going to demonstrate in a minute one of our sample plots, but trees are measured using a basal area factor. So we measure the larger trees in a very efficient way by measuring the basal area. There's a fixed radius plot where poles are measured, and the three transects, 10-meter transects taken from the centre of the plot, and there are subplots there which are 1.5 meter fixed radius plots for measuring regeneration. So moving on from all of that there, this is the sort of data that we get from it. This is showing us comparing, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. These ones here are the results from the 1.5 meter plots. These are the poles and these are the trees. So all the information we gather from this very, very efficient survey protocol produces this sort of data here. All right. We can look at this more carefully. We've also got financial information in there as well, so that we're monitoring here the biological growth of the trees, but here we're looking at the standing timber value and also the value increment as well. So the monetary side of things is very important. We're looking at maximizing the amount of quality, because this gives us a breakdown of the quality classes as well, and there is a very high score here and an even higher one in this one. Yeah, so this one here is the better drain sites. So this is Western Red Cedar and Douglas Fir. The proportion of AB logs is 79, whereas on the lower areas, because I said we stratified this, it's 70%, but 70% of AB class is still very high. Now, this here is the first inventory at Starhead, 2006, and this is the second inventory in 2011. All these plots that we've put in are within the compartment are permanent plots. They've been surveyed in from a tie point. We can now use GPS as well, so we know what the coordinates are. So the point is that we come back to that exactly same spot in 5 years' time and remeasure the same trees. The same trees if they haven't been felled. Obviously, in the case that there's been a selective felling or thinning, some of those trees might not be there. But those that are remaining, we're measuring them again. So we're not messing around. Well, not messing around is the wrong word. We're not having to deal with fancy statistics and things. That we're going back to exactly that same sample plot, and exactly the same specimens are being remeasured. So we know exactly what the increment is on trees of different sizes, because we're going to be looking at what we do in there, and the crowns are of different shapes, so different trees will respond in different ways, different species will as well. So this is the data from one inventory. This is the data from the second inventory 5 years later. This was remeasured again in 2016, and it was due to be remeasured this year, but because of COVID, it's been put off for a year. All right. But the point is that here you can trace the progression of the stand. This is the classic number stems per hectare histogram. It's approaching some kind of a J, bit of a J there, bit of a J shape. It's not certainly nowhere perfect. And then this is a volume per hectare, and you can see if you look closely that it is actually changing. This here is a base layer per hectare, and it's number of quality stems. So the AB grade are the red, and the lower grades are the green. So here the proportion has increased between the two inventories, and this is what a forest manager of this particular estate would want to see. It all depends on the objects of management. These are policy woodlands here. We've heard about the complexities that we're dealing with in these particular woodlands here. So the objects of management might be different, but you can then follow the progression between these two inventories. And all sorts of other data here. Regeneration by age class, structure and quality. You can see the red has increased, particularly in the small wood, interestingly enough. There was none there at all. And measures of spatial variability as well. All this data is there, and you can analyze that, and then you can then go and use this information when you're next marking, or when you are putting timber up for sale. This saves a huge amount of time. All right. In the old days, it used to be a tape that you used to take out. There used to be all sorts of undergrowth in the way of the tape, and you'd go and twist it and caught up in food. Just give me a sec. The centre of the plot. Okay, that's a bit of metal.
Not a treaty.
So that so next year, in 5 years' time, we follow the bearing. We go to the tie point. We follow the bearing. We come to the distance. We come here, and then with a metal detector, we find it out.
With permission.
So that we find exactly the precise point where we put it in. So excuse me, I'll just. We're setting things up at the moment. So here we are, Connor. You're nearly there. A bit over your left. Your left. That's it. There's a 400 grads, which makes it very, very easy if you're taking back shots, because you simply add or take off 200 from whatever you're looking at, and you can do things very, very easily with this. Except when you're dividing it up into three, because it doesn't divide equally. So that one there was 0, 133 grad, and this is 267 grad. So we have 3 transects here. If this was the full AFI, we would take it out 20 meters. So we would have a transect at a pole at 10, another pole at 20 meters, because we're measuring lots of different things within these different fixed radius plots for it. But the first thing we do start measuring is the trees. Spatial area sample. So what we're doing is we're using calipers, and we're going to do it on this one because there aren't any branches in the way. But the first thing we do is we measure the diameter at 1.3, and then we use the vertex to tell us what the distance is. 6.3. So you can use different coefficients. The coefficient is the number that you use in order to multiply that distance. So 6.3 is a 18.9. So that tree needs to be 19 centimeters in order to be counted. And it is 45. So this one is counted as being in, but it could be an awful lot further away. So this is a way, this is a big tree that happens to be close to the plot. There's no question about it. This one is measured. But if we went and measured that rather than small tree, it wouldn't be within. So that it's not contributing to the basal area. This is contributing to the basal area of the stand, but that small one over there isn't. So you have two things. The coefficient is the figure that you use for timing the distance in meters, and you set it against the diameter in centimeters. All right? But then that equates to a basal area factor, because everybody here, I'm sure, uses a prism, and you have prisms which is a factor of 2 or a factor of 3, and you do a stem count. If it's 2, you times it by 2 and it gives you the basal area. If it's 3, you times it by 3 and it gives you the basal area. If you're using a coefficient of 3, the basal area factor is 2.25. What we're doing is that this tree has been counted. We've recorded 2 diameters, because this is the critical diameter, because it's facing the centre of the plot. This is the beam, if you like. You know, it's also called an angle count, because there's an angle there which is set against this diameter. This diameter is the critical one, because it's facing the centre of the plot. On this diameter, but then they're not this way here. But that is an elliptical tree, it's 45, 41. If this was at a critical distance, 41 might be out, but 45 is in. So you always have to go through the correct sequence of measurements, which is perpendicular, facing the plot, and then directly. So we have two. This is recorded. The average diameter is then used in the basal area and volume calculations, but it's critical that you do it in the right order. We look at the quality, and we have 5 quality grades, and this one here is pretty good. It's all down to straightness, which is the main thing, whether it's cylindrical or not. This one is slightly elliptical, so that would certainly keep it out of the top grade. And we're looking at knot size and also knot angle. At the vitality, and the vitality is really to do with the shape of the crown. And you can see that because of the thinning here, the Douglas fir was taken out at the last intervention, that this crown is not symmetrical. It's deeper on that side there, and there's been suppression on this one here. So the crown is a healthy, a good crown is a third of the top height. A normal crown is a third and a quarter, and anything less than a quarter is a poor quality crown. But you can also have a good crown, and there's adelges or something like that, and it's only got half its needles up there. So it's important that we record these things, because the next time we come in, there might be a change. So all this is doing is setting up this baseline of information that we have about this stand. So quality, vitality, and the next thing that we give a score for is the social position. So we can have trees that are dominant. This is a plantation, so the chances are that most trees here will either be codominant or suppressed. In truly irregular stands, you're going to have trees that are going to be far more obviously dominant. But it does come about that you do find these dominant stands. There's a very, very good crown on this one here. It's quite a good quality log. If we looked at that more carefully, we might make that a dominant, but possibly not. Very often, some of these big wolf trees are dominants. And all we're doing here is we're just recording the information. We're not doing the marking. We might be second guessing what the guys are going to do the marking might be doing, but at this stage here, all we do is recording. So there's a very big tree here which has got, the crown has been, the live crown is quite high, but those very, very coarse branches would downgrade that to a 3.